What you are about to see is a Farsight Deep News remote viewing session that was done totally blind by the remote viewer, where the target is 2 near-term but future assassination attempts that will be made against President Donald Trump. Please understand that we do not expect these assassination attempts to succeed or possibly even to be made. The reasons that we do these types of projects is both to better understand our world and to prevent such future events from happening. Our research at Farsight clearly establishes that we live in a universe where there are multiple timelines, or parallel realities. I have written about the science of how this is possible in my book, Remote Viewing, The Science and Theory of Nonphysical Perception, which has both physical and Kindle versions and is available on Amazon. Indeed, the primary reason that the United States military is interested in remote viewing is precisely to prevent certain types of events from happening. If remote viewers see things happening in the future, then that information is brought back to the present by the remote viewers, enabling things to be done to prevent those very things from happening, thereby establishing a new timeline. Without such information from the future, then there is nothing to stop such events from happening. It is with that idea in mind that we encourage you to watch this remote viewing session closely. There are 2 focuses with this project. The first focus is the next assassination attempt to be made on Donald Trump after January 1st, 2025. And the second focus for this project is the second next assassination attempt to be made on Donald Trump after January 1st, 2025. Now, you should understand that the United States intelligence services are constantly on the lookout for such types of events. While Farsight does not yet have millions of subscribers, we nonetheless know for certain that the U.S. intelligence services do watch our stuff closely, and they will take this session seriously, as well as the sessions done by our other remote viewers for this same target. We will publish all 4 sessions in the beginning of January 2025. Understand that the U.S. intelligence services do not communicate with us. They do not publicize any of their work, and we are not expecting any feedback from them. But let me assure you that the U.S. intelligence services really are the best that exist on this planet. Nothing escapes them, and they follow up every lead. So when we do something at Farsight, it helps. Our work also helps educate our worldwide audience in how remote viewing is done in such operational settings. Also, understand that such types of assassination attempts are unfortunately very common in our world today. So the 2 assassination attempts that are described in this session are not likely to be the only attempts made in 2025. This is why the work from our other remote viewers is important to see as well. Some of the events that are seen by the other viewers that participated in this project at Farsight will be the same events, but some will be different. So this project will not be exhaustive of all such assassination attempts, but it will catch many, and maybe most. Again, we will publish all of our sessions for this project soon in January 2025, both on FarsightPrime.com as well as YouTube. If you are new to remote viewing, please take a moment to subscribe to our streaming service, FarsightPrime.com, where you will find the largest high-quality public library of remote viewing projects that exists anywhere on the planet. It took us a great many years to construct this high-value library, and we normally add at least 2 new major projects to it each month. Much of what you learned in school about our world is simply incorrect. One day the record will be set straight on such matters, and the FarsightPrime.com library will be the primary source of information that will enable you and everyone else to know the truth about the world we all live in. But for now, without further ado, here is a remote viewing session that examines 2 major assassination attempts against President Donald Trump that reside in the near future. And again, we are expecting that the publication of this and related videos will aid in the prevention of these events from succeeding. The remote viewer for this session is Aziz Brown. All right, Aziz, so here we are with deep news. And we're going to go through the session, and then we'll go through the target reveal after you go through your session. And let me just state, for the audience's sake, let me just ask you, as of right this second, you don't know anything about the nature of the project or the target or anything, is that correct?
Nope, I have no idea.
So you've done this totally blind, and so after you go through your session, I'll tell you what the target is. Okay?
Sounds great.
All right, so why don't you begin? I'm looking at your paper copy of the session right now. So why don't you begin in the, I guess, your page 4 or something.
Great.
And then we'll give you the target reveal afterwards.
Okay. Sounds good. Alrighty, so I got a multitude of images when I first started out the session. I kept seeing images of a land-water interface with sort of this mountainous, maybe cliff face on the land side of the land-water interface. I started also perceiving other images of what maybe was an urban area. It was really hard to tell. I couldn't really see it as clearly as I just saw these multiple subjects moving around, and the environment seemed like it was covered in shadow, like it was like there was shade from other structures or some sort of like other thing, just a canopy above them. And then I also started to perceive images of subjects walking past another subject who seemed like that subject was sitting down, a large group of subjects in another visual, and another visual of multiple low elevation structures. And I was getting sort of like this odd natural feeling, like there was it was not super modern, this environment. I was sort of teetering between those two things. But anyway, the environment itself seemed like it was under large shadows, and this kind of felt urban, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was seeing subjects walking through like narrow rocky valley paths or something like that. That was just part of my initial early perceptions. Anyway, then I got on to my first flash sketch, which was a land-water interface, and I was seeing a structure which seemed to be on the water, gave off some grayish hues, and on the land side, once again, these rocky land cliffs and tall rectangular shapes that sort of were jutting out and rising above the environment. Then I also, on my second flash sketch, started to perceive, once again, multiple subjects walking by a subject which seemed seated and covered in attire that seemed to wrap around the subject's body. In the third flash sketch, I got what looked like an urban area with a very tall, unique looking structure that was up above it. And then I also started to perceive multiple mountains in the background. And then I also got What about your deductions?
Well, my deduction was on the third flash sketch was Iran and specifically Tehran, because the way the environment looked, it just had this this mountainous feature in the background, and I don't know, maybe I was just looking at current events recently and that triggered that. But anyway, deduction, high level thing. So I moved on to focus flash sketch 4, and in the fourth flash sketch I was seeing two subjects and then a third subject who seemed to be more in formalish attire, and then I moved on to focus 1. So at focus 1,
he looks a little stout.
Yeah, he looks a little stout, that flash sketch number 4. And so then I moved on to focus 1, and then I was seeing basically from the center of the target, I started to perceive once again this environment that seemed like I was seeing a flat area. I wasn't sure if it was water, but a flat area that was adjacent to an urban area, and it was a hard base surface, felt rocky and lumpy feeling. I was getting the sense of tall structures or natural features in front of the subjects, and it was I got a kind of a humid or moist feeling, or just a perception of maybe water being around, but still I couldn't very much clarify it. I deducted cobblestone just when I was feeling the
the rocky, lumpy feeling on the base surface as well. And I knew that there were multiple subjects around as well. And then I did another sketch of the environment, and I started to perceive, once again, multiple low-level structures with one structure just towering above it. And I deducted Seattle because it kind of looked like the Sky Needle, but it's once again, that's a high-level deduction. I'm just looking at this very tall spire-like structure with an odd top that sort of, it seems like it's a little wider at the top, like a disc sort of looking thing. And then as I was moving around to the target event for Focus 1, then I started to perceive what looked like a vehicle or an enclosed space that looked very vehicle-ish on the side of a road-looking environment inside of an urban area. And I got the sense that there was this subject with darkish light, dark and light attire seated in that structure, this vehicle structure, and something happened that sort of crushed or pushed in on the vehicle. It seemed like it crunched inward, like there was a car accident that like T-boned it, but I didn't really see another car and I didn't really see an accident, so I didn't really know what happened at this point. So then I moved inside of the vehicle.
Again, this is all for Focus 1.
Yeah, we're still in Focus 1. And so then I moved inside of the vehicle, and inside of the vehicle I was perceiving two subjects. It seemed like there was a taller and leaner subject to one side and a shorter and wider subject on the other side of these seats that seemed like they were in the back of the vehicle. And that was before this crunching event happened. And then this downward force just penetrates this environment, just crushing into the vehicle, and it seems like it obliterates the leaner, taller subject on the side, just completely obliterates that subject. And the other subject, the sort of shorter, wider subject, seemed to have just been crunched inward, like it just crushed inward and folded in on himself like a pretzel or like folded paper, like an origami thing, or like you like crush and crumple a paper. It was just, it was absolutely, he was just folded in on himself. And then basically I'm seeing one subject in the front, if I move back before that destruction, and one, maybe two subjects in the front of the vehicle, and then definitely those two subjects were in the back of the vehicle, and this crunching thing happened. And then I started to perceive the crunching effect from the outside of the vehicle again, and I'm seeing more detail of this being like an urban type of environment. And I see this needle-like projectile. It's thin. It's not like as thin as an actual needle, but it's just it's very thin compared to it is long, and it flies down, just down from the sky, and strikes this vehicle on the upper left side of it, just crushing in one side of the vehicle and burning it up in a cloud of energetics. And that other subject on the side just gets folded into this crumple of crinkled metal. And it's just, it just looks like a real crinkled up mess over there for whatever's left over of the vehicle. And it just seems like this burning metallic material is going on. And so after the smoke and the energetics clears, it seems like this dry, grayish, charred hunk of metal is just left there. And then the collection of multiple subjects seem to briefly focus in on that scene and then go there. So then I start to move to the source of Object A, which is that needle-like thin projectile that flew down and caused all that crunching destruction. Calling it Object A, I moved to the source of Object A and described that. And I got two visuals, one of this sort of needle-looking projectile just sitting upright on a base surface, and then I got another visual of that same needle-like projectile being shot out of a machine. And that machine was very rectangular. It had a lot of holes on it, but it was very large, very rectangular, and it seemed like machinery, just mechanical machinery, and kind of reminded...
It looks like a launcher.
Yeah, like a launcher thing, but it reminded me of a bottle rocket because of the sound that it made when it shot off. And like I can't really mimic it, like a phew, like type of sound just came out, and it just triggered my memories of bottle rockets as those fireworks. And anyway, it's obviously not a bottle rocket. It's way bigger, and it flies up, and I see this visual of it flying past a bunch of cloud dynamics, just completely horizontal across this landscape way above it.
And it's just object A just shoots across the sky at this crazy speed, threading through the sky like a needle, yet it sounds kind of like a jet, and it's covering a very large distance, so it's going pretty far. And then from a top-down perspective, I see it move past all this natural topography, this hilly natural topography with grays and with a green and tan hues, and then it seems to cross over in front of this, well, above this urban area. And once it gets over that urban area, the angle of this needle projectile object A, it dips down very abruptly. And so then object A, just after it quickly angles itself downwards, it just starts shooting straight down. And once it's over this dense urban area, it just goes right into the middle of it. And it only does that really once that urban area becomes the dominant topography directly below object A. So it's able to change direction quite abruptly, or it looked like it did. So then I moved to focus 2.
Okay, focus 2 now.
Yeah. And focus 2, I was once again getting multiple perceptions. The first perception I was perceiving was multiple angry subjects that seemed to be raising their fists and yelling very loudly. And it didn't sound like English, but some of the subjects seemed to have facial hair, kind of like I've got facial hair on right now. Some of them seem to be clean shaven. And then I saw also images of an expansive land with tannish hills and flatter green areas. And then I saw, amidst these flashes of perception, I got this sense of restriction and an inability to do much, combined with this venting of frustrations and anger and yelling and furious faces and voices and anger and this sense of defeated anguish almost. And then I really just feel like there's a bunch of angry people or subjects who are just unable to do much to deal with what's accosting them. They feel accosted. They feel like they have a right to be angry. And then I started to move to the target event for Focus 2 and describe that. And I saw a bunch of subjects marching in uniform. I saw this uniformed mobilization of uniformed subjects on a road between two structures. And then I got another visual of that sort of marching just collection of uniformed subjects that all looked pretty similar, more or less, with these sort of headgear on and uniforms on, and the top of the headgear almost had this reddish burgundy hue to it. The uniform seemed a bit tannish in attire, and the energy just feels like they're organizing, and it's like this attack energy. But they also feel like they're the ones that have been attacked or wronged. And this unified mobilization in preparation for an attack, or just this is in and of itself an attack or part of the attack energy, just feels like that's what's going on. It's like a focused gathering. It feels very aggressive, yet also it feels like it's part of this defensive energy. So this idea of no more gloves coming off type of perspective is prolific here. And continuing on with this probes of the target event for Focus 2, I'm seeing other visuals coming up now with this what looks like an urban environment with I'm seeing structures, I'm seeing vast landscapes of irregular hilly topography in the background, structures spaced out from each other, and I'm seeing really what looks like a tank. I mean, it just looks like a tank. I deducted tank. Tank is a high-level term, but it's a very armored, large, tough vehicle of sorts, and it's bulky and it's wide and heavy metallic structure that's a vehicle. And I feel like there are lots of projectiles in the air in this environment, lots of subjects around too, but the subjects don't feel like they're visible. I mean, I don't really see them. I can just feel them. And I feel like that's on purpose because there's a huge amount of projectiles just flying around through the air. I deducted war because it just looks like war. I mean, it just looks like just a war scene. And I'm getting other visuals of like heavily armored or padded subjects sitting inside of a structure. It's a dark and enclosed area. These subjects are speaking, and they're around these like boxy technology. They're holding long devices. They have gear on them, and they're holding gear of various sorts. And then I moved on to the target event again, and I started to perceive what looked like what I'm feeling is supposed to be like, I almost felt like it's supposed to be violent, like a car exploding or something like that, but I'm just not seeing violent stuff. It seems like I'm seeing a subject in the formal attire, and he seems fine. And it seems like there's multiple other subjects in front of the subject. It seems like there's this vehicle behind the subject. The subject seems like he's got an arm up, like almost like he's waving.
You have a deduction also.
Yeah, I deducted a politician. I deducted Donald Trump. I don't know if it's any of those people, but it seems like this is just a male subject in a suit, a formal attire, walking down a path with other subjects, and the energy feels like maybe there's violence, but I don't see any violence. I just see like maybe that's just there's a tenseness in the air that made me think that, but I just don't see any violence for this part, this flash of this perception. But as I continue going on to other flashes of other perceptions dealing with the target event for Focus 2, once again I'm seeing destruction pop up again. So it's now I'm seeing just an urban area, and it's just a wide angle perspective of this urban area, and it has multiple projectiles or objects flying at it from the sky. And then I have basically a chart. It seems like I have Beta and Chi. I think it's Chi. It's CHE. It's
yeah.
Okay, Chi. So Beta and Chi. And on the Beta side, I have much closer to the Beta side, but a little further out in the line. Seems like that's where Focus 1 takes place. So it's not right at the Beta point. It's further down the line towards Chi, but it's definitely closer to the Beta side than it is the halfway point. And Focus 2 seems to take place very close to the Chi. It seems like Focus 2 is almost right on the Chi. I mean, it seems much closer to the Chi than Focus 1 was to the Beta. So yeah, that is the last of my perceptions, though, for this deep news.
All right. Well, are you interested in knowing what this target was?
Very much so, yes.
If the target wasn't so serious, I'd make a joke and sort of things like that, but this is a serious target, so.
All right.
All right, we have two focuses for this target, and I'll give you the paper in a second, but where the world is in such heavy disruption right now, such chaos, and looks like it's going to be getting much, much worse, I just assumed that there would be assassination attempts against Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, because there's already been two during the campaign. So I was just wondering, would there be any? So this is the Focus 1 is the first next assassination attempt to be made on Donald Trump after January 1st, 2025. Focus 2 is the second next assassination attempt to be made on Donald Trump after January 1st, 2025. Now, the timeline where you had Beta and Chi, it was sort of written Chi or Chi, it doesn't matter. One letter was in the beginning, one letter is the end. The beginning of that timeline was January 2025. And the end of that timeline was December 2025.
Wow.
So Focus 1, which was the first assassination attempt, happens apparently closer to the January time, maybe like February or March. And the second focus from your timeline looks like it happens closer to the December time of 2025. Anyway, here's the paper target.
Well, from my,
so there are assassination attempts against Donald Trump, and it looks like everything else that we're getting. It looks like the world comes apart in 2025. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, if I had to guess, kind of looks like he's fine. It's
yeah, it looks like he survives.
It looks like he's fine. It looks like see, the thing is I wondered to myself, the Focus 1 that had the car, right? The vehicle.
Yeah, that wasn't both of them had missile type things, but the first one was while riding in a car in an urban area.
Now we don't know if that's actually him, though. I wonder if that's.
I'm looking at your page 12, and you have that stout person.
Yeah, we don't know if that's actually him. Just so I can play devil's advocate here, because clearly there is a subject that I deducted as looking like Donald Trump in Focus 2, totally fine. That subject did not look like this subject on page 12 who gets crunched up in a car. That subject did not look like he was totally fine. But it's so if I had to guess, if that is him, that's he makes it out of that. If that's not him, that could be a situation that we're looking at where this is maybe some of the people responsible for attempting something that are getting blown up themselves. And then moving on into focus 2, it seems like there's a lot of warfare and a lot of destruction and a lot of fighting, but it also seems like the visual that I had of what the closest subject that could have looked like him, if it was him, seems like that subject is fine, but it seems like there's violence, and that energy of violence is in the air. I was perceiving, like, I feel like that should be happening, but it's not. By should be happening, I feel like that's like that violence was intended in this environment, but I'm not seeing any violence. So it's that was something that I wrote down there. So
well, you have to remember that the target is the assassination attempts.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean they succeed. The second thing is that
so maybe they tried to do this and it doesn't come to pass.
Maybe, yeah. Remember, we live in a situation of multiple timelines, and we've dealt with this very often. That's exactly why the military is interested in remote viewing. If you see something in the future that you don't like, you can change something so that it doesn't happen.
So focus 1 might be a timeline that doesn't come to pass, and focus 2 being a timeline where it looks like he's just fine.
Yeah, but you're still having missiles coming in and people trying to attack.
Yeah,
it looks like in both cases, so they may be different timelines, focus 1 and focus 2. It may be in focus 1 they actually succeed in assassinating him, but it's an assassination attempt that really, the target is the first assassination attempt, and you have missiles coming in and blowing up what looks like a presidential car. 2 guys sitting in the back and drivers in the front. So, I mean, it really has sort of that flavor of it. And the target is the first assassination attempt, and that's what you have. You have missiles coming in and blowing up that car. So, we have to assume, and that stout person, I just looking at the data and looking at the definition of the target, that stout person probably is Donald Trump. So seeing this, we know for a fact, it may not be, we don't yet have millions of subscribers, but we know for a fact that the intelligence service does look at all of our stuff. That we know absolutely. I won't go into why we know that, but we know that they do that. So when they see this, I guarantee you they're going to be on high alert for anything like this, and especially with the timeline that happens in early 2025. So they may be able to stop this thing. But on the other hand, we do see a situation where the wars, plural, in the world, the whole politics of the world is just coming apart all at once. This is exactly what the good ET's friends, and we have our ET board meetings, have told us. All these crises are happening all at once in order to overload the information control system and force disclosure to happen.
Well,
so anyway, that event may not happen as a timeline, but we're let me just be quiet, but yeah.
Well, if I was just going to, I have trouble believing that all of these these images that I'm seeing with all of this warfare stuff, these multiple subjects, I have trouble thinking that this is all directed directly at him. What I would say is matching more of the mainstream media reports that I've seen, just looking at mainstream news. I've seen quite a lot of justification by mainstream journalists for why the United States should take a more aggressive response with Iran as a result of people blaming previous assassination attempts that have already happened on Iran. And if these sort of things had any credence to them, then that would actually make a lot of sense as to why I'm seeing these mobilized armies and what looks like actually missiles going into urban areas, this large-scale destruction. Because I don't think that this is like all this large-scale destruction just to kill one man. I think it by tasking this type of target, the mind would realize that these assassination attempts are connected to a larger geopolitical conflict, and the mind would easily start flooding my perceptions with those types of things, given if that was legitimately connected to what we're seeing in a larger perspective to these assassination attempts. I would say that if I had to just sort of round off my perceptions to be something that might not be correct, because this is a conscious mind interpretation, this is my subjective conscious mind interpretation of the data, I would say that focus 1, we don't know enough to know the identity of the people getting bombed. That could be a retaliation to assassination attempts as much as it could be an actual assassination attempt, and it could be an assassination attempt that doesn't come to pass because the intelligence operatives would have heard about the session and stopped it. And so those are 3 possibilities for focus 1, and I don't know which one that could be. Focus 2, however, seems to showcase large-scale geopolitical destruction amidst a subject who I deducted as potentially being Donald Trump, as him being fine, but the large-scale geopolitical warfare reigned on. And that would make sense given what we're seeing in the mainstream, as people are pointing fingers and saying, hey, these assassination attempts are because of them. And you know, it's
okay, so let me be devil's advocate as well. Okay?
Sure, yeah.
Because you're deeply involved in your own perception, and I'm sort of looking at it just from the perspective of in your face, point blank. The target is an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Okay, and your first focus, which is focus 1, starts out with an urban area, and you were deducting Iran and Tehran, and they have a weird type of spiral thing. I was sort of looking at that architecture, and I was saying that does look Middle Eastern-ish. And then you come up with, on page 8, a picture that looks like a stout guy, like Donald Trump. And regardless, you have the target is an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. You have a guy that looks exactly like Donald Trump in a car, and a missile coming down and blowing up the car.
And they may try that.
That's what the target is.
Yeah.
So it really looks on just surface levels like a definite assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And it does have sort of a Middle Eastern, Iran type of a flavor to it in the beginning, although maybe it's, maybe that's, you didn't have all that much information on that. Now, focus 2, however, is, but you did more on that focus 1. I mean, you really have that, it's in an urban area, and the missile is shot from sort of a far distance away, and it's really well targeted, and it actually hits a car. So whoever fired it, this wasn't just a random missile in that direction. It was a targeted, cruise missile type thing that actually.
Yeah, it was targeted for sure.
It was accurate, and they knew the location, they knew the exact car that it had to hit, and so on. Okay, now with focus 2, you start out with focus 2 with all the people with facial hair that sort of looks very Islamic, and then you have these military people that do not look like those are American uniforms. They look almost like these berets or something. Anyway, but headgear on, and these large displays of military marching, and then you have what really looks like a war situation with a tank in an urban area with things shooting all over the place, and military people with headgear on that does look sort of American-ish. And then the next page is something that looks like a politician giving a speech outside of a car, and you deduct Donald Trump. And that's exactly what the target is. The target is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So it really, from my perspective, is we had 2 assassination attempts targeted for the year 2025, and you came up with 2, And on the surface, everything really does look like Donald Trump. Now, I'm assuming that these assassination attempts will not succeed because of our sessions. And we're going to have to wait and see what everyone else gets. But definitely when we have sessions like this, it alerts military intelligence. I know for a fact they look at our stuff. They will do their own investigations. They'll be on high alert. So the probability of these actual things occurring, in my view, I would hope, is close to zero. But I would assume that the attempts will still occur, and that the military, U.S. military and intelligence people are going to be on high alert for things like this. Meaning, I don't think whoever the opponents are that are sending these missiles, I don't think they're looking at our remote viewing sessions. But U.S. military intelligence, I guarantee you, they are looking at our sessions. And they probably take our stuff as a starting point, and then their own intelligence sort of kicks into gear. And so I'm just assuming that they will figure this stuff out and stop it from happening. But it does look, in terms of what we're seeing here, these assassination attempts don't look like the previous assassination attempts with Donald Trump during the campaign, where it was like a lone guy trying to do something. These ones look like they're in the context of a world coming apart, because you have many missiles, many things coming, going into urban areas. These are missiles. These aren't like a guy with a gun.
Yeah. Focus 2 especially is general warfare.
So what I'm seeing from this is 2025, the world is coming apart. That's what I'm reading from this. And that there will be attempts to assassinate Donald Trump. And again, for those people who are worried about this, I hope our sessions do not get canceled or anything like that. But we're saying that whenever we have sessions like this, we're assuming that these events will not happen precisely because of these sessions. So these sessions are actually protective in terms of that type of a thing. But without these sessions, according to the theory, without these sessions, these events happen.
Well, it's definitely, it will be interesting to see how 2025 goes crazy, because I can definitely say the idea of general warfare between the United States and Iran across the entirety of 2025, that is not a far cry from where we're at right now in our current geopolitical position right now. So
also, I think the enemies of the U.S. I think are going to eventually put two and two together. Is the United States has a long history of getting involved with military conflicts around the world, but it never affects the continental United States because there's the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. I think our enemies, the U.S. enemies, are going to start putting two and two together, that unless the conflicts actually hit home, unless they actually get into the continental United States, the United States will still continue to be free to sort of meddle in everybody's affairs and have no serious repercussions. The only repercussions are we spend a lot of money. So, so I'm assuming that 2025 is the beginning of a change where the enemies say, no, you can't just have these wars in distant lands. These wars have to come back and hit you. So that's how I'm sort of seeing a shift in global geopolitics. Maybe I'm wrong, but
we'll see what happens. I mean, technology is a factor now that wasn't a factor in other of the 20th century wars. So it's,
Let's wait and see what the other viewers say, and then you're the first person to do this session. So, and then we go on to the next one, Aziz.
On to the next one. It'll be interesting. Thanks.
Yeah.